everyone and welcome back to my channel. Thank you for joining me today. Today I have another missing persons case for you, so let's go ahead and jump right in. We will be discussing the case of Danny Pickett, who disappeared the night of October 24th, 2006. Danny was just 25 years old at the time of his disappearance, and his family still struggles with the loss of their brother and son. Danny was a fisherman on a boat by the name of the Newfoundland Tradition. The boat had docked at Southside Road in St. John's Harbor. Danny and his shipmate intended to go out that evening. However, Danny was to return to the boat, spend the night, and the next day take a bus home to Clarenville. As I mentioned, Danny and his shipmate intended to go out for the night. They took a cab to a local bar district by the name of George Street. George Street is known to be a very busy and active little area of town. It is known for drunken brawls and has a sizable homeless population. He was first at the Cotton Club, but later went to Turkey Joe's to meet up with his crewmate, which was only about 2 blocks up the road. He had allegedly planned on returning to the Cotton Club at some point that night. While we don't know a lot about the happenings of that evening, we do know that Danny was alive and well at about 10:30 to 11 p.m. that night. He had made a call to his brother from a bar called Club 1, which was about midway between the Cotton Club and Turkey Joe's. Based on his shipmate's report, we do know that he wasn't intending to stop at Club 1, so I suppose that he stopped just to make the phone call. His brother stated that Danny sounded nervous. During the call, Danny mentioned that he was either making someone paranoid or was paranoid by someone or something himself. The details on this weren't very clear, and Danny did not go into more detail. However, it was clear that Danny was uneasy. However, as the call went on, Danny then switched gears and asked his brother if he would like to come fishing with him next year, to which his brother said yes, he would love to. All in all, the call ended on a positive note, and Danny asked his brother to tell his mother and father that he loved them. The family did indicate that this was something Danny usually did during a phone call, and it shouldn't necessarily be taken as an indication of a goodbye. Now, an interesting part of that night was that Danny had mentioned to his shipmate that he had intended to meet up with a female friend at some point. There was never a name or phone number given for this woman in order for the police to investigate this lead, but who was this woman? After Danny's disappearance, the police simply asked this woman to come forward with any information she may have. However, no one ever came forward, and this woman's identity is still unknown. Obviously, Danny did not board the bus back home to Clarenville, and when he did not make it home that evening, the family began to worry. Something wasn't right. As the investigation had started and was ongoing, another interesting statement was made by police. They had stated that Daniel never returned to the vessel that night. However, in an interview with CBC, the family noted that his watch and wallet was found by the first mate. When the family came to retrieve these items, the watch was missing. So clearly these are two contradicting events, the police saying that he did not return to the vessel that night, yet his wallet was on the boat. We do know that he had withdrawn $200 from his bank account before going out, and later another $40. That would mean that he would have likely had his wallet on him while out on George Street, and had not left it on the boat. Additionally, usually you get ID'd entering a bar, so it's likely that he had his wallet on him that night to prove age for identification, getting into bars, and for his money. Something that really bothered me about the investigation of Danny's disappearance was that the police did not search the waters surrounding the boat for a week, and they also didn't take around his picture and ask bartenders, staff of the bars that he attended, if they had seen this man. It took them 2 weeks to do that. Divers did search the waters around the boat's location. However, the current is fairly strong in that harbor, and it's unlikely that his body would still have been there a week later. As well, the family stated that it was highly unlikely that Danny had slipped and fallen in the water, as he had been around boats his entire life. However, we can't rule out that there was an accident. He may have been very intoxicated. While it's unlikely, I wouldn't totally discount it. On Tuesday, October 31st, 2006, police used men on horseback, dogs, and citizens to help look for Danny in the surrounding areas. As I said, it took police 2 weeks to ask bartenders and staff if they had seen Danny that night. In my opinion, 2 weeks after the fact is far too long. They should have followed up on this within hours or days of him going missing so that people would have his image fresh in their mind and their memory would be more clear. The family was extremely disappointed with the time that it took for police to act, and I would have been extremely disappointed myself. 2 weeks is far too long to ask people if they remember someone, and a week later in a harbor on the ocean is too long to search for a body. It was eventually found by police that there was nothing to suggest an altercation had taken place between Danny and another male. The following April, about 5 or 6 months later, a psychic by the name of Shelley Stokes found a jacket and a hat that matched the description of what Danny had been wearing that evening. They were found on Water Street behind Campbell's Ship Supply. I find it important to note that it would have been along the route that Danny would have taken were he to walk back to the boat that night. Unfortunately, this evidence did not give police any new information or direction. There was nothing on it to suggest an altercation had taken place, nor was there any blood present. So it appears that Danny simply vanished that night. Danny is described as being 5'7", approximately 150 pounds, with blue eyes and blonde hair. So let's get to some theories. Let's talk about the least likely theory, in my opinion. That Danny was a runaway. I find this obviously unlikely, as Danny had been on the phone making future plans with his brother and was specifically headed home the next day with a bus ticket booked. Of course, it isn't out of the realm of possibility entirely, I just feel it's the most unlikely theory we have. The big question mark I really have about this case is who was the mystery woman, and why did she never come forward? Is it possible that foul play was involved? Most likely, in my opinion. Is it possible this mystery woman had lured Danny off of his path and he was potentially robbed, mugged, murdered by her or herself and someone she worked with? To me, this is the most suspicious thing that happened that night, was that his shipmate knew that he was supposed to meet up with some woman. And then there was that phone call where Danny had specifically said he was feeling paranoid, or that he was making someone paranoid. Was it someone that worked with this woman, potentially a pimp, or something like that? While there's no evidence to suggest that an altercation took place, and while there was nothing ever found, it still seems to me like this is a huge question mark. I would really like to know who this mystery woman is, and if Danny did in fact meet up with her that night, and if he did, where. Another interesting part of this story is the psychic who found the jacket and the hat. I'd be pretty curious to see what else she had to say about the case, if she was, reading it or picking up on things about the case. I do believe some individuals have gifts or abilities, but I also believe that there's lots of fakes out there and lots of people who take advantage of vulnerable people. However, I would be interested to hear what else she had to say regarding the case, if anything. So that's all I have for you today, guys. There's not a ton of information surrounding this case, as the police really never found anything. There was no eyewitnesses. His shipmate really didn't have much more information than what I stated, and neither did the crew. It seems clear to me that Danny made it back that night. Why would his wallet be on the boat if he hadn't made it back to the boat that night? Could he have possibly left again? I don't know. Maybe that's something that's a possibility. Either way, it's a very sad case. Danny had gone out for a fun night with a friend, bar hopping a little bit, and the next day he was meant to come home. And his family will forever wonder what happened to him that night. Danny's brother was quoted in saying, "At first, anytime you think about it, it's hard to talk to people. You would break down and cry. Even now, I can be like stone. Other times, it hits you like a ton of bricks." Having a sister I am so close with myself, I would be absolutely devastated if she suddenly disappeared off the face of the earth, and I genuinely cannot imagine their pain. If you have any information about the disappearance of Danny Pickett, please do come forward. As always, I will leave information down below. If you do have information, please contact the Royal Newfoundland Constabulary or Crime Stoppers. The phone numbers will be down there. I hope this could shed some light on Danny's disappearance and get the word out there. Together, maybe we could find out what happened to Danny Pickett and bring his family some closure. And that is it for me today, guys. If you like this video, please give it a big thumbs up. I would love to hear what you believe happened to Danny Pickett down in the comments, or if you have any other information, theories, info that I didn't include in my video. I would love to hear it and learn more about the case. Thank you so much for joining me today, and I'll see you next time. Bye, guys.